Chapter 5. Part 1. Your Baseball Cap. Wednesday, June 29th. No cloud cover. The air humid, heavy, held a mix of gas and salt that drifted on a soft breeze. Pulling at the shoulders of my maroon t-shirt, it stuck to my skin, to my chest, to the inner curve along my spine just up between my shoulder blades. In the summer's heat that reflected off the bright sun-baked concrete sidewalk slabs, I begged for the clouds to move in, to cool the stuffy air and settle on the wind. With a hesitant reach for the library's back door, I let my thoughts freeze me in place. Overthinking everything, I shook off all my inner questions, worries, and made my way up to the back of the building where my small, cramped, one-window office was. "Hey," Derek texted, "I think we should go on a walk after we get off." "Sounds like that could be fun," I texted back. Turning my phone face down, I sat back and took a deep breath. The very idea that Derek was here confused me. I had seen a glimpse of him over a year ago, a 1-second glance, and to be honest, I hadn't thought of it since. Yet here he was. I half didn't want to think that I manifested him. He was a good man. I more wanted to believe that fate made us friends, that there was some kind of magic to our meeting. And I didn't want to fully accept that maybe I was going to end up like my mother, to one day wake up and realize that my nightmares had followed me out of my dreams. Desperately praying to God, to nature's three ticking hands on a deciduous tree, keeping track of time with all its leaves, where you only get a second from buzz to green, a minute from green to September, and an hour that feels like a second of autumn things. I begged that I could stay like this, something recognizable, always me. 5:06 p.m. Noticing Derek at the flower bed, I made my way around it to where he sat. Derek, my hero, grinning at him, my hands in my pockets. The wind combed its fingers through his short brown hair as he looked up at me, then back down quickly. Turning to the older-looking couple to his left, he spoke, "Forrest, this is my mom and dad." Feeling my heart stop dead in my chest, I nervously smiled at Derek, who refused to make full eye contact with me as I introduced myself to them. He came to stand at my right. A smile crossing his face half annoyed me and half made me want to kiss the man. "I was thinking we could all go on a walk, show them around. It's not too hot out now that the clouds moved in," Derek said, finally meeting my eyes. "Maybe grab dinner after. Derek told us a lot about you, Forrest," his mother said, walking to my left. "Well, not that much, Mom," Derek said, his neck and ears turning red. "You're from Illinois?" I asked, looking over at his dad, who was on his mother's left. "How was the travel?" "We're just outside of Rockford and Belvedere." He smiled, using the same confident nature that felt steady and was reflected in Derek. "It wasn't as bad as we were thinking it was going to be." "So did you guys fly here or drive?" I asked, trying to make conversation. "Nancy here has to work this weekend, so we ended up flying. It's faster, just as long as we don't have too many layovers, which we shouldn't." I could see where Derek had gotten his smile and his height from. "What about you?" his mother asked. Derek told us some things, not a whole lot. "Well, I grew up in North Dakota most of my life," I said, putting my hands in my pockets again. "Bouncing around from New Salem to Green Grass Grove and my grandparents. It's a nice small cluster of towns only about 5 miles apart." Derek said, "You had siblings?" his dad asked. "Just 2, my older brother Dan and our younger sister Jen." "What do they do?" "Dan lives with my dad over in Fargo. Jen is still in school living with our cousin Rachel." "How did the two of you meet?" his mother chimed in. "It wasn't that long ago. He had spilled on his shirt. I let him use my hoodie. We ended up talking and here we are." That's what I remember. Same, he said, smiling over at me. What about your mother and father? Hoping they wouldn't ask any more personal family-related questions, I knew I had to answer before my silence dragged on too long. Oh, they live in North Dakota. Confused, Derek glanced over at me. I could feel his eyes on the side of my face. My mom, I continued, is a school counselor and my dad owns a small business. Finishing our tour around the familiar blocks of the city, Derek and I walked his parents back to their car. Waving them off, Derek turned to me as we walked back to the library in silence. Forrest, you lied. Why? Stopping in my tracks, I turned to look up at him, dropping my shoulders as if I had just lost a war. You shouldn't be ashamed, he said, looking concerned. What would you know? I said, looking him dead in the eyes. Everywhere you step, flowers grow. That must be a hard life to live. You have no clue the struggles I've been through. He shot at me. I'm not trying to compete with you on who's had a harder life. I can't have them looking down on me like I'm something less. Derek, if I told them about me, they would go quiet, and I'd get nothing but their sympathy. Forrest, they would have understood. They're good people and they would never look down on you. It's easy for you to talk about your family because your reality isn't filled with rough edges, but mine, it's a little more difficult. We may be able to meet each other halfway on some things, but others, we're nothing alike. Still frozen. Derek stared at a spot on the sidewalk just to my left behind me. Flowers don't grow everywhere I walk, Forrest. They do, from what I can see. I dropped my head. You don't think I'd rather have that life? I said, taking a single step up to him, slowly admitting to myself that I may have been a little more aggressive than I should have. I wish the lies were true, but they're not, and I'm not ready to face them head on yet. Taking a deep breath, he shook his head. I understand. I should have said something to them beforehand. Hey Forrest, look, my parents are going to be here all day today and leave on Friday. You should hang out with us, get to know them a little better. They'll grow on you. You probably want family time. No, I'm comfortable with you here. I want you guys to get to know each other. Derek, this whole thing makes me anxious, I said, reaching for his arms. What? Why? What if I say the wrong thing and they hate me or give me an odd look like I'm weird? They tell you to stop seeing me, you take their advice. Hearing my own voice crack at the very thought, I used my right pointer finger to rub my lower lip. You take their advice, and you go away. Forrest, you and I are always going to be good. Just be yourself, and you'll be fine. We're just going to have dinner with them, and I think they're going to go see a play right after. My mom wanted to see Les Miserables. She loves the movie and freaked out when she heard they were here in Seattle. 7:59 p.m. Black tires drove through even darker rain puddles. I walked in just behind Derek, who took my leftover food from dinner and carried it to the fridge. I should probably get going soon, I said, pulling him aside as his parents and brothers walked in. I have work tomorrow. Come on, just one game of cards and I'll think about letting you go. Yeah, I'm not all that good, but I do like playing. Grinning at me, he pulled on one of his autumn-colored plaids that hung by the door. Staring at the pattern of plaid he had just slipped on. Light blue in color with hints of brown and gray running through it. It had the kind of colors I had been looking for some time now. He held me captivated. Feeling myself zone out for several moments, euphoria swept over me. Sitting next to Derek and watching him interact with his family was almost like a high. His mother, beautiful, looked at Derek's dad as if he were everything to her. His dad played and joked around with his sons like they were all his best friends. I could feel my smile fading. Feeling resentment in the form of fire burning in my chest, I almost hated my mom and dad for not giving Dan, Jen or I this, the one thing we craved and needed the most. Tears blurred my vision and thoughts. I quickly excused myself and went to the bathroom. "Hey, are you okay?" Derek asked, walking up behind me. "You left the game pretty fast." "Yeah, I'm just a little sleepy, that's all. We're just going to finish out this hand," he said, pointing behind him, "and everyone's going to crash. Come on, I'll be right next to you." "Derek, I might just go home." "What? They're loving you, and my brothers like you. Here, I'll set a timer." Pulling out his phone, he showed it to me. "I'll take you home in the next 30 minutes. "That should be fine." I smiled after him. Finding our seats again, I looked around the table. Fine for some time, the bleeding, oozing, thick gushing tar that covered some of my memories pumped into my chest and played in my mind's eye. Asterisk. Quickly grabbing Jen into my arms, our mom's yelling only got louder as our dad furiously packed his bags, threw them by the front door and looked for his keys. "Forrest, take Jen and go to your bedroom," our mom said, pointing down the hall. "Do it now, Forrest," covering Jen's ears. I wrapped her soft sleeping body in blankets and hid in the closet. Only getting fragments of their heated exchange, I kept my ears sharp, hearing them go off about second chances and never caring. Crashing, smashing objects hit the walls. I set Jen down, quickly turned off the already flickering bedroom lamp light and raced to lock the bedroom door. At the top of her lungs, my mom's voice imprinted itself into the walls of the house, into the glass windows and onto our skin. "You better not try and come back then if you walk out that door. I'm sick and tired of you running out like this. I never want to see you around this town again, you hear me? You better stay gone." 8:32 p.m. Burnt trees. Empty gray. Ash-covered mountain valleys. It killed me to think that this dead memory was all I had of my mom and dad's interactions. Anger boiling out of shame, I quickly looked down at my hands and tried to think of some excuse to leave. The dining room light pendant swaying and flickering caught everyone's attention. "Hey Derek," I whispered, wanting to look at his phone's timer. "It must be the storm," Tom said, the glow reflecting in his eyes as he followed it. "It ended hours ago." "Maybe the people upstairs?" Looking stressed and clutching his chest, Derek's dad gritted his face in pain. "Dad, what's wrong?" "Jeff, honey," his mom yelled frantic. "His pacemaker." "Dad," Derek yelled, jumping over to him. "Tom, call the ambulance." 12:45 a.m. "Forrest, I'm happy you're here," Derek was finally able to say after hours of silent uncertainty by his dad's bedside. Realizing that I needed to start working through my emotions, I had planned to call my dad just to go over any hard feelings that might still be lingering. Focusing on Derek's dad and almost begging for him to be okay, I was finally able to look over at Derek. "I'm happy I'm here too. It looks like your husband suffered a heart attack, Mrs. Stangler. There is a 50-50 chance he might come out of this okay," the doctor informed us. Looking over at Derek and his family, I got up and excused myself, letting them have time with him while I sat in the waiting room. "Ah, hey Dad, it's me, Forrest. I know we haven't talked in some time. I just wanted to talk, maybe go over some things that have been on my mind. Anyway, please call me back when you can." "Okay, bye. We'll have to come visit again when Jeff is feeling a little better." Derek's mom's voice rang out to my right. Looking around at the empty waiting room, I looked at her as she came to sit down next to me. "Derek has told us some things about you, but not everything. I'm sorry for our prying questions." Looking down at my hands, I tried my hardest to smile. "It's not that he's ashamed of you, Forrest, it's just that Derek is a very private person. Heck, We had to pry you from him, but once he opened up, he loved talking about you. And I must say you're everything he said you are. I see why he wants to keep you to himself. A secret that only he knows. That's a really nice thing to say. Thank you. I smiled. Don't let his silent, steady stature deter you from getting to know him, she said, moving closer to me, her voice going soft. He's almost 30 and he's never wanted us to meet one of his close friends as bad as you. To be honest, you're the reason why we're here. What do you mean? He kept on insisting that we meet you. We had some free time this week, so we flew out. You should have seen him in the car after he picked us up from the airport. He was a mess. He made us promise not to tell, but I just thought you should know. Glancing down and smiling to myself, I looked back up. I wish I could give him the same things, but there's not much left of my family. He knows that, she said, giving me a smile, and he understands. We all do. It looks like he's stable for now, Derek said, coming to sit next to us. You should go home and get some sleep. I'll call you in the morning. Thursday, June 30th. Hearing the soft patter of rain on this cloud-covered day, I slowly glanced at Derek, who refused to look up over at me. He wiped his eyes. I gathered what I could of my body and approached him as if he were made of thin glass. Coming to stand in front of him, I let my fingertips slide to the sides of his face, where I could feel his beard would be if he didn't shave. Red-eyed, his gaze traveled up from my chest, along my clavicle, resting for a second on my neck, over my lips and finally to my eyes. Too scared to blink, from what looked like the weight of the oceans gathering in his eyes, I rested my forehead against his. I knew the apprehensiveness he felt. The uncertainty of his shaking hands, all of it stemming from the roots of a pine tree, as if it could see the black smoke of a forest fire growing closer. Stepping back from him, I found my voice. If all we ever are flower petals stuck to a rain-covered window, I'd still love to be here. With you. Next to you, Derek Stangler. Throwing my bag over my damp tan jacket shoulder, I touched his face one last time and walked into work. Pulling my jacket off, I set it aside, hoping that Derek was going to be okay. Only 4 hours, I thought. I put in my headphones and started cataloging what had been sent to me. Glancing over at my phone as it rang next to my computer, I quickly grabbed it and saw a Fargo area code. For a second, I had forgotten that I left my dad a message late last night. Panicking, I quickly answered it and held it up hesitantly to my ear. I spent the next 2 hours asking as many questions as I could about Mom, Greg and Jen. Hearing my phone about to die, I frantically looked around for a charger. Remembering that I had forgotten it in my car, I dropped my shoulders. Why'd you leave the way you did? I finally asked. Your mother gave me no choice. She wouldn't change her ways, and it was all getting so old. Did you ever love her? Eve often took my breath away. I loved her so much, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't stand there as she wasted away, sleeping with other men and neglecting you kids when I was gone. I wanted to take all of you with me, but there was no way I could support 3 kids, so I talked Eve into sending you and Jen to your grandparents. I never got a hold of you guys because your mother wouldn't let me. That's not to say I'm not without my faults, but from the moment I left, you and your sister have lived in the back of my mind, never growing old. Always that little boy with the brightest eyes and my baby girl. I'll call you more often, Forrest. I like hearing your voice. I think I'd like that, I whispered. Dropping the phone from my ear, I didn't realize how sweaty and red my hand had gotten from gripping the phone so tight. 5:02 p.m. Looking at the clock, our conversation had lasted for 2 hours. Numb, I put on my jacket and slowly walked down the stairs out the lobby and sat down in my usual spot, trying to process what I was feeling. This man knew me, in a way no one had. After losing my mother, I wondered if I'd ever feel this way again after remembering that I had a dad. I'd thought of all the possible outcomes and had anxiously prepared myself for as many of them as I could. Realizing that I had been just sitting there looking at my hands for almost 20 minutes, I pulled together what shapes of my mind I could and looked around, hoping no one had noticed me. Friday, July 1st. Derek, calling me as I got out of class, was noticeably happier by the tone of his voice. He told me that his dad had been discharged and that he and his mom were heading home now. He said he wondered if I'd be at the library. After I told him that even on my days off I normally like to go have lunch there. 11:30 a.m. I looked over at his spot to my right as I sat down. A small group of people had gathered just in front of the strip of 10 pines for some event. Carrying a tripod and several suitcases, a small TV crew unpacked their equipment. "Hey Forrest," jogging over to me, Derek flashed a smile. "All of us accountants are going to be taking a photo. It's a yearly thing, just over there," he said, nodding behind him to the small crowd. "I'm going to be accepting our award on our behalf. Can you hold my things?" he asked, pulling off his thin black jacket and fixing his gray polo. "Derek, I have to tell you something," I said, my voice shaking, unsure of the truth of myself. "We'll have to talk about it later. You know what? Just come over. It'll be fun." I walked up next to him. He quickly handed me his phone and went to stand next to his coworkers, behind several people. The group of 20 or so all stood smiling with Derek, the tallest, in the middle. And here to accept the award on the behalf of Seattle's Meta High-Rise Bank is Derek Stangler. With every clap, Derek's face burned red as he made his way through some people and down to a woman who shook his hand. I watched them give a brief interview. Derek stepped away from the camera and turned to his coworkers who had gathered around him. Fighting his way to me after many handshakes and photos, Derek stopped just a few feet away, his face still slightly red, an afterglow of rushing blood. "Not that they should, but it's a little odd," I said, walking up to him. "I feel like no one here knows me, and I know no one." "They don't know you," Derek replied as if it were an absolute fact that I should have seen. Stopping in my tracks as he led me away from the group, I looked around as if I were a stranger to myself and had no real reason to be there. At the loss of me next to him, Derek turned around, paused for a moment and walked to me. Looking over me, then behind me at the conversing people, he spoke into my left ear only inches away. "Forrest, what we do when we're alone, and I have you, isn't anyone's business. That's for just us to know." I understand," I whispered back. Rubbing my lower lip, I looked up to meet his brown eyes, his cologne from his lower jaw and neck coming to rest on me. "I'm going to go up to my office and get changed. We could hang out for the rest of the day. You don't work at the library today?" "I don't," I said, reaching for the small glass award in his hand. "You mind if I—" "Oh, it's nothing," he said, letting it fall to his side, out of my reach. Raising my eyebrows, I said nothing as he handed it to me. Why does this only have your name on it?" Rubbing his eyes, he cleared his throat. "I helped the bank close several major deals last month. They wanted to honor me." "You're a major deal. Why didn't you tell me?" "Embarrassed, I guess," he said, shrugging. "Anyway, don't you like surprises? You shouldn't be embarrassed." "This is amazing," I said, handing the award back to him as he blushed. "We have a 3-day weekend then. Let me go get changed. We can go for a drink tonight," he said, touching my shoulder. "Hold up, don't you work tomorrow and the rest of today?" I wondered. "Nope," he replied, turning around, his hands in his pockets, his award under his right arm. He slowly walked backward. "They gave me the days off. It's just going to be you and I. Finding me with his smile 15 minutes later, Derek, in a dark green plaid over a gray t-shirt, sat down next to me and pushed his shoulder into mine. "Sorry your parents couldn't stay here for this," I whispered, glancing at the side of his face, my heart heavy for him, unsure if it was the right thing to say. Looking away from me quickly and down at his hands, Derek fell silent for some time, as if I had touched the tender loneliness he kept only to himself. His eyes turning a soft pink, he sniffed, "Me too." The way he and I fell into place over the next month was so quiet, without effort. It was like watching the North Pacific clouds resting low, fresh off the bay, move up into the valleys of the pine-covered mountains and letting fall a soft rain that chased away the dry season for just one more day. Sitting next to him at the flower bed and looking over at his short brown hair dancing in the breeze, a soft smile that I knew all too well would cross his face as he looked up at me from his book, and often asked me what I was thinking. Almost too scared to breathe, I sometimes wondered if he too could feel the delicate dynamic of our coincidental placement next to each other, if it ever took his breath away. His routine eventually became mine. Settling in next to me, a tangible feeling of belonging grew in the form of purple flowers that lived in the cracks of concrete at our feet. That's an odd place for flowers to grow, I thought. Sunday, July 31st. Driving to the train station early that Sunday morning, I took several deep nostril breaths before turning off the SUV. Sitting there staring off into space, I anxiously rubbed the palms of my hands on my jeans and got out. On an old wooden bench, just out of the way, I waited, checking my phone every time it popped into my head. I finally turned up the ringer and put it deep in my pocket. With all the passing people, I kept my head down and pulled up my hood. Opening the book I had brought with me, I found myself reading the same paragraph over and over again. With a loud, cracking static voice over the intercom, a woman spoke. 4 minutes till the next Amtrak arrives from Fargo. They'll be pulling into Station 4C. Having watched Jen grow older through a computer and phone screen, I made my way to her station, and perked up as she stepped off the train a few minutes later. A little taller than last year, she found me with the same eyes our mother had given her. Running over to me, she dropped her bags. Feeling a swell of emotions grip my chest and neck, I swept her into my arms and pulled her close. I took a step back after some time, my voice cracking from the painful lump in my throat. "It's good to see you in person," I half whispered, wiping my eyes. "You too." She smiled the same smile I had known my whole life. Wiping her tears away also, she used the same fingers to push her hair behind her ears. "Here, let me get those," I said, grabbing her bags and nodding for her to follow me to the SUV. Talking about her 2-day trip, about school, Jen and I found a little restaurant to eat at before we went back to my place. Going over memory after memory of our mom, the look Jen gave me made me feel at home. Not the feeling of being back in North Dakota, but just the fact that she was right next to me, that if I wanted to, I could reach over without having to close my eyes and touch her face with my fingertips, gave me the kind of comfort I felt with our mom and dad. We finished up our food after 35 minutes. A timer flashing in my mind's eye, the clock started running backward. Soon, too soon, I'd have to see her off again, right at the place I had picked her up at. Taking the back roads back to my place, I let Jen get the feeling of the city before we settled in for the night. "Hey, I know it's you and I time, but I invited Derek over at 7:30. He's going to bring over some movies and board games, and I asked him to get some kind of food. Something with chocolate, I hope," Jen said, coming out of the spare bedroom and curling up on the couch next to me. "Yeah, to be honest, Forrest, I thought you'd be talking about him all night. And I'd eventually have to roll my eyes at you, and I haven't had to roll them once." 7:25 p.m. I heard a knock at the door. Derek's voice echoed through the hall as he let himself in. "I've got something all three of us would like." He set the bags on the table, took off his shoes and came to sit next to me. For movies, I didn't know what to bring, so I just grabbed everything I know you and I like. "You mean everything mainstream?" Jen smiled over at us. "That the whole world likes too. And I thought you guys would be a little more sophisticated." I barely know how to spell sophisticated, let alone acted word. "We're simple guys," I said, throwing my right arm around Derek's shoulder, pulling him close. "Mainstream is the only stream. Nerds. At least we don't read comic books." Derek smiled. I felt my face turn hot. Jen turned her head slow to me. "When Forrest was in high school, the dude would climb out his bedroom window and read comic books on the roof. I guess he wanted the full experience," Derek said, smiling over at me. After watching 3 movies and finishing our dessert, Jen fell asleep to my right. Covering her up with a blanket, I turned to Derek, who sat in the blue light of the TV. "I was going to hold up to tell you, but I guess now is just as good as any." "What is it?" I asked, sitting up a little. "My work. Remember how I got my position?" "They're sending me away for a bit," he said, itching his lower lip. "Oh, how long?" "2 weeks starting next month." "Forrest, it'll be like that for probably the rest of the year." I was also thinking about going home for several months. It depends on how the next few weeks go. Not saying anything, I looked down at my hands. "When I'm back, we can spend all our time together, I promise. It's just that they're giving me some great opportunities to travel, and I can't pass them up." "No, I get that," I said, smiling. "I'll take lots of photos, videos," Derek said, sitting forward and resting his elbows on his knees. "It'll be like I'm not even gone." "You going home, is that for work too?" "No. I got the position I wanted, yeah, but I'm feeling a little homesick. I want to spend more time with my dad." "You're not sure if you're going to come back?" Sitting in silence for too long, Derek, catching me off guard, pushed his lips to mine, stood up and walked to the front door. Getting up to follow him after several moments, his hands over his eyes, he took a deep breath, his face flushed, he looked at me. Where are they sending you first?" I asked, for only us to hear. "New York for right now. I'll bring you back a baseball cap or something." Seeing Jen asleep on the couch, Derek walked up to the record player and turned it on with a click. "I thought you said you didn't dance," I said in a low voice. "Or run." "I don't, both sound exhausting." He smiled, reaching for my hand. I stood only inches from him. "I'm going to put my hand on your waist and you put yours on my shoulder." Spinning around, he pulled me into him. "Close your eyes and just pretend we're by the ocean," he whispered as we swayed around the room. Moving to the sound of the scratching needle for several moments, I let my arms fall as we stopped. "Thanks for the lesson," I whispered. Neither of us moving. Only 2 inches apart. I stood facing him, my eyes on his left shoulder. Feeling my hands slip into my pockets unconsciously, Derek's fingertips met mine, stopping me. "It's okay to have butterflies around me, Forrest," he whispered into the air. "I feel the same. All I want is to be here with you. And thanks. For what?" "For not making a big deal out of me kissing you. I kind of like that you need me." My eyes heavy as I got into bed that night, I finally felt like I could rest with no stress. I let it all drift away. Laying down in a blanket of soft falling snow next to Jen, I touched her face. "I told you I'd find my own." Monday, August 1st. 10:29 a.m. With Jen here for the week, I took lecture off but decided I'd still go to the library and work, letting Jen have a little time to herself for exploring. Rubbing my eyes and stretching on the cool cold blankets of my queen-size bed, I threw on a New York gray sweatshirt, blue jeans and walked out of my bedroom. Smelling a mix of eggs, sausage and bacon, I walked to the island where Jen was cooking. It's already 10:30. Why didn't you wake me up? You always sleep in. Anyway, you were dead to the world. I don't think I've ever seen you so comfortable. Yeah, it was a good sleep. I told you that I have to go to the library from 1 to 5, right? You'll be cool here. And if you go walking around, let me know. Noticing one of the books I had let Derek borrow on the coffee table almost 2 weeks ago, I picked it up and turned it over in my hands. Did he leave this here last night? I thought aloud. No, actually he stopped by this morning and dropped it off. I had just started breakfast when he walked in. He said I should just let you sleep. I hadn't even started the book. A small sticky note in Derek's handwriting read, I marked all my favorite spots. I think you'd like them too. Setting the book down on my nightstand, I softly touched my lips, remembering that Derek had kissed me last night in the blue glow of the TV. I smiled under my fingertips. Want help? No, I'm just about done. Jen smiled to me as I came to sit down across from her. So what did you want to do today? We could go sightseeing, I said. Have a late lunch. I could show you where Derek and I both work. It's not that far into the city. Okay, it is. You're lucky you have a city all to yourself. Me, I have Minnesota. Did you know they're predicting the coldest weather this year? An all-time record low. We still get snow and cold weather here too. Yeah, but when it snows here, it looks beautiful, and when it snows in Minnesota, people die. Think of what I'm being subjected to. I am, don't worry, I said, taking a sip of coffee. It'll be in no time that we'll have a small house here. You'll be finishing up school and I'll have a career and we'll get a dog. The whole 9 yards. You'll get so sick of seeing me that you'll be begging to move out. Staring for a moment at the pan in front of her, she looked up. You promise? It's a slow burn. But yeah, I promise. What are you going to do with your inheritance? I'm just saving it. I replied, I have everything I need right here. They said I couldn't touch mine till I'm 26, which is bullshit. Jen spat, throwing her spatula into the sink. Yeah, but you get everything paid for. College, a new car, an apartment. Anyway, you don't want to go spending it all at once right now. Well, it would be cool to go on some kind of vacation sometime. I mean hell, I've never been out of the country, and look at you. You've been all over the world. Going to Canada once isn't all over the world, but I have been to many states. It is when you've lived in the same town your whole life. You think that's cool. Derek travels for his job. That man has been all over the world, to all those beautiful places. I wish I were right there next to him going where he goes. Her head down, in silence, Jen sat just to my right. Using her fork to play with her eggs, she spoke. You'll miss him when he goes away. Staring off into space, I rubbed the back of my neck. That's something I'll never tell him. What? Why? At this point in our friendship, it's not calling for that kind of truth. That's something I'll keep to myself. Heck, I may never tell him. Jen, I really like him. I can't risk our friendship telling him that I think his smile is everything. If he ever goes away, you'd sit in the same spot every day, waiting for him to come back. Pushing her long straight brown hair behind her left ear, Jen spoke in a soft voice. I know you too well, Forrest. What else aren't you telling him? Nothing. All he has to do is ask. You're not exactly an open book, she said, finally looking up at me. About that, I said, hearing my own voice change. Noticing immediately Jen's expression grew stern, I pulled at the end of my shirt. Jen, it started happening. I can manifest just as fast as Mom did. Forrest, what? She said, going silent. The tree I was next to out in Green Grass Grove got struck by lightning. From that moment on, things started happening. I didn't know how to control it, how everything was so delicately tied to my thoughts. I still don't know how it all works. Silent for some time, Jen finally said something. If Mom showed us anything, Forrest, it's what we don't want. Do good with it. Friday, August 5th. In a small bar, just off 5th Avenue North. My face and neck red. I sat on my hands trying to defend some of my not-so-best moments in life. Jen smiled over at Derek, who was loving all her erratic, misjudged, crazy stories she could remember about me. I frantically tried kicking her under the table. "What can I get the three of you?" the waitress finally asked, walking up. Ordering last, I closed the menu and smiled up at the waitress. "I'd also like 3 shots of vodka." "I'm driving tonight, Forrest." Derek, lowering one eyebrow, shook his head no. "These are for me." Drunk Forrest, Derek thought out loud, while looking around at some of the empty booths. Can't say I've ever seen him. He likes to dance, then fall asleep, so don't get too excited, Jen said, wrapping her hands around her glass of water. 10:45 p.m. My face numb and my hands slow. I swayed alone on the small wooden party light-lit dance floor. "Come dance with me," I pleaded, walking up to our table. Playing with his empty glass of water, his sleeves rolled up, Derek smiled up at me. "Forrest, I don't dance in public anyway." "Jen, come on." "Forrest, what?" he said. She nodded over at Derek. "Fine," I said, dropping my shoulders. "Let's go home." Tripping into a group of guys as we walked out, I was aggressively shoved back and fell hard. "Hey man, fuck you," one of the guys yelled, stepping up to me. Quickly grabbing me by the arm, Jen tried to steer me away from them. Anger mixed with alcohol acted like kerosene. "Forrest, come on. They're not worth it." "Forrest, whatever you're thinking, stop it. You freak, get the fuck out." One of them shot at me. "Fuck off," Derek yelled, shoving the guy out of his way. He grabbed me hard by the arm and pushed me behind him. "Come on, we're getting out of here." Fuming anger, we walked several bar fronts down the street to Derek's SUV. Jen stopped and pulled me aside. "Forrest, I know what you're thinking," Jen said, holding onto my left arm, "and it needs to stop, Forrest." Forrest, grabbing me by the face, now begging me, Jen shook her head, trying not to cry. "Forrest, you're drunk and they're not worth it." What are you talking about?" Derek asked, looking confused at the two of us. It's too late. I'm not sure what's going to happen to them," I said, trying my hardest to focus on her eyes, my emotions out of control. With an explosion that knocked us all over, fire ripped through the bar just 4 buildings from us, ringing in my ears in a spinning mind. I pulled Derek and Jen up. We looked back at the bar we had just left. A raging inferno of heat we could feel even at the distance we were. "What did you do?" Jen screamed, hitting me. "Forrest, what did you do?" "There were kids in there." "Come on, we have to go," Derek yelled, grabbing my jacket in his fist. He led us over to the SUV. "We have to help them," Jen cried. "It's too dangerous," Derek said, pulling her away. "Come on, let's go. There's nothing we can do." Saturday, August 6th. 9:05 a.m. Sitting together at the train station, Jen, just to my right, slowly reached for my hand. "What are you and Derek going to do for the rest of the week?" she asked, wrapping my fingers in hers. "Work," I said, smiling over at her the best I could. "You're the most exciting thing that has happened to us in some time. I'll be back next month. Just promise me you'll never do anything like that again." It's not like you, Forrest. I'll be here to get you. Oh yeah, Warren will probably call you with more details about the adoption proceedings, I replied, walking her over to her train cart. She turned to face me and touched my face. Be the good guy. 12:45 p.m. Sitting on the couch later that day, I switched through channels, waiting for dinner to get here. Catching a quick glimpse of the charred remains of the bar downtown, Derek asked me to turn it louder. What did Jen mean by all that last night, Forrest? He asked. You heard the news, I said, sitting up. There was a gas leak in the kitchen. I was nowhere near there. That's bullshit, Derek yelled, startling me. Are you accusing me of starting the gas leak? Derek, you had your eyes on me the whole time. I never left your sight. And yeah, I was drunk, but I still knew what was going on. You don't believe me. I don't know what to think, he said, running his hands through his hair and moving to the back of the couch. I got up and put my jacket on. Derek followed me down to my car and got in. We sat in silence for a few moments, then I started it up and drove to the library. Putting in my headphones as I made my way out of the downtown parking garage, I found my spot at the flower bed and sat. I know they upset you, but I feel like there's something more here. Do you care to tell me? Derek asked, pushing my book to my lap and trying to meet my eyes. My voice still in defense mode, I shot out at him for being too close. Don't look down on me like I'm one of your clients. Forrest, he took a deep breath. His voice shaking rose in frustration. I have never looked down on you. I've always seen you as an equal, someone I could relate to. I don't know how it happens, I said, playing with my fingers. I pulled out my headphones, but it happens. What does? I'm really good at visualizing things in my head, I said, letting my shoulders sink, hoping it would push the truth out a little more easily. In my chest, it's like a spark. If I'm emotionally charged, either mad or hurt, things happen around me. Most of the time if I want something to happen, it will. I almost always get what I want, and I'm not saying that to be arrogant because I'm better at controlling it now. But sometimes my thoughts and emotions get out of control. There are so many things I can't explain that have happened to me. Like, things will move, lights will burn out or flicker, things will fall or break. If my emotional state is corrupt, it causes electrical malfunctions. I don't know how to control it. The lights were flickering above my dining room table the night my dad had his heart attack. Feeling my blood freeze, I slowly looked over at Derek. That could have been for many reasons. Wide-eyed, he stared up at the row of pines just in front of us, tears falling from his pained red eyes. Did you hurt my dad? He asked, his voice breaking. My mind blanked. I knew I couldn't lie to him. Derek, choose your words wisely, Forrest. Not saying anything after several agonizing moments, Derek stood up and grabbed me hard by the arm and led me to a secluded area just hidden by some trees next to where the library had no windows. You'd better start talking, Derek yelled, shoving me back hard. I hit the grass, fighting the lump in my throat. Vision hazy, I picked myself back up. If you ever try to hurt my family again, Forrest, getting up in my face, Derek spat. I could hurt you. I didn't mean to. You have to believe me, I choked, staring at the brick wall just behind him. I was thinking about my family at the time, how things were broken. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. So you couldn't have excused yourself or left? Instead you stayed and put my dad in danger. He yelled. I tried to. I didn't know he had a pacemaker. It's hard for me to tell how fast things are going to manifest. Sometimes it's almost right away, sometimes it takes hours. Look, I know I have things to work through. I'm trying. I reached out to my dad to try and fix things. So, this doesn't happen again. Forrest, I don't care about your dysfunctional shitshow of a family. You killed those people at the bar, and you almost killed my dad. Taking a step back from him, my throat closed tight. I couldn't speak. No. You know what? I'm not going to go home like I said I was. Derek yelled, wheeling around, his eyes and face burning blood red. I'm going to stay here so you can see me. I hope you always feel lonely, knowing I want nothing to do with you anymore. And Forrest, I hope it destroys you. Monday, August 15th. Hey, I texted Mr. Barton that morning. Mr. Barton, it's been 3 days since you've been to class. I don't mind the sub, but are you feeling okay? Just some health problems, he texted back Forrest. Nothing too serious. Don't worry about it. I'll be in class tomorrow and we can talk more. Well, only come if you're feeling better, I texted. Concern flooded my blood as Mr. Barton, with bags under his eyes, slowly made his way in. Hey, Mr. Barton, if you're really not feeling good, you should probably go home and rest. Forrest, I've been resting for days now and it's not passing. Maybe all I need is some fresh air. Anyway, I can't stay in my house any longer. You know us environmentalists. We love being outside. Oh, hey, I know it's kind of early, but my wife wanted me to ask you what you were doing for Thanksgiving this year. She insisted you come over and have dinner with us. I appreciate you trying to take our minds off of your health, but the only thing we want is for you to get better. I gently put my hand on his back but quickly took it away. Even through his clothes, his body was cold and frigid. Mr. Barton's voice, only audible thanks to the microphone, filled the room like it had so many times before. Feeling a little more settled and at home, I pulled out my laptop and started in on the notes. Hearing several screams a moment later, I glanced up just in time to see Mr. Barton collapse, the color in his face light blue. I leapt up and crouched down by his side, checking his vitals. Mr. Barton. Mr. Barton. Can you hear me? I called out frantically. 9:59 p.m. Sitting in the waiting room with some of the students and faculty that night, I rested my head against the wall, begging for him to be okay. I cleared my chest from all the feelings of sorrow and worry, purged my mind from all the echoing thoughts and let my body rest. In a last-ditch effort, I flooded his body with light and demanded that healing take place. Pulling me out of my thoughts, 2 doctors and Ms. Barton nodded for those of us who were still there to follow them into the hall. Helen, red-eyed, did her best to keep herself together. He's only 55, she cried. They found a massive blood clot in his brain. They don't think he's going to make it through this. The doctors told us with heavy hearts. Numb. But not broken. Yet. I made my way back to the waiting room and sat there staring out the window. The room started to slowly empty out as the night dragged on. 1:56 a.m. Forrest. Helen's voice startled me out of a light sleep. You should go home. Everyone else did. He said you guys invited me to Thanksgiving. Feeling my eyes itch, I wiped them the best I could. That was a really kind thing of you guys to do. I don't have much family around here and it really meant a lot. He talked highly of you, she said, sitting down next to me. He said in some ways you were a lot like him. You both loved nature, had a sense of justice. He loved that you saw nature the same way he did, as something to be valued, something to fight for. Why don't you come back this Friday to see how he's doing? I know he'd love that. Friday, August 19th. Holding my breath, I buried my hands deep in my pockets and walked through the glass sliding doors of the hospital. I fought the urge to turn around. The clean smell of the glossed-over hallways, sterilized equipment and alcohol swabs set me on edge. Catching Helen out of the corner of my eye just to my right, I quickly darted in her direction. Finding me with her gaze, she sat up. Forrest. Ms. Barton, hey, how is he? I've been waiting all morning for you, she said, standing up as I walked to her. I am sorry, I would have come sooner, I said, looking at the clock. No, it's okay. It gave me a lot of time to think, Forrest. She paused for a moment. He passed last night. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, taking a step back from her. To have you come here and watch him die, he never would have wanted that. It would have only broken you. Sitting back down, I realized her features were translucent. Not so noticeable if you weren't looking. I remembered that Mr. Barton said she had passed away almost 4 months ago. Oh, he was so protective over you, she said, smiling. He loved your name, Forrest. He told me he got to read some of your poetry. How you see the world, you reminded him of growth, giving, the kind of rainstorm that cleansed. We both hope that never changes. 1:30 p.m. Reading the same line over and over again, I sat in silence in front of the library, hoping that the fresh air would calm my fluctuating, stinging, begging to be numb nerves. But inside, a vice grip tightened all the muscles around my chest. I was scared that my ribcage, made of frail bone, wasn't strong enough to keep my heart from drifting apart, terrified that if I rested for just 1 second, a piece of me would fly out, that I would have to substitute it for some other part of me. Running my fingertips over my shirt, I could hear my own voice talking to the clouds. Derek, my heart feels weird, I said, looking over at his empty spot next to me. Noticing Colin to my right, my blood froze. Keeping my head down, I wiped my sore eyes and frantically packed up my things. You shouldn't be here. I sniffed. How did you find me? Forrest, I just want to talk, he said, trying to catch up to me as I moved quickly away from him. You never contacted me on the offer. Yeah, I know, I said, turning around to face him. I was never going to. I have no clue what you guys want with me, and I swear to God if this has anything to do with my mother, you better back off right now. Why would this have anything to do with your mother? I'm not stupid. I know people know about her. I assure you, Forrest, this isn't about your mother. It's just an employment opportunity. I'm not into politics. Anyway, how do you even know about me? Find me? Our database is constantly scanning for qualified candidates. Your name is at the top of our list, Forrest. You applied for a job in Olympia with a smaller branch of our unit if I'm not mistaken. We have very competitive wages and great healthcare benefits. The position we want you for only works at most 12 hours a week, and you can still make a living off of that. You wouldn't have to have 2 part-time jobs just to make ends meet. You could work for us and be more than stable. You won't get denied loans or a mortgage if you ever wanted to buy your own house. Look, he said, stepping closer to me. We're having a job fair this weekend, tomorrow. You should come. Lots of people will be there. Also, walk-in interviews. I hope to see you. Saturday, August 20th. Standing just outside the skyscraper's west-facing entrance, I shook off my nerves and tried to fix my wind-blown hair. Pulling at the glass door's handle a moment later, a large number of people had gathered in the lobby. Dressed to impress, they made their way around booths and poster boards. Passing several halls and conference rooms filled with even more people, I looked around. Not sure what I was even looking for, I decided I'd stay only for a short time. Forrest, we're sorry to hear about Mr. Barton, Colin said, walking up from behind me. Fuck off, I said, absolutely not in the mood, pushing past him. What are you going to do to fill up more of your time? He called after me. Honestly thinking about taking some time away from school, I stopped and turned around to face him. You're good at wearing people down in a stalker, clingy, annoying sort of way. The interview is happening right now if you're still up for it, he said, looking at his watch. I'm not dressed for it. Anyway, I'm still super suspicious of this whole thing, I said, pulling on the neck of my shirt. I followed him to the elevator. He turned to face me. Don't worry about it. You can wear whatever the hell you want. Taking a sidestep away from him, I half laughed. You're not going to kill me, are you? Not a chance. You took a long time to answer that, which kind of concerns me. Hold up, the meeting isn't with Mr. Yates, is it? That guy hates me. Nope, you're in luck. Good, I said, relaxing a little. I'm not exactly a fan of his either. We got out of the elevator on the 13th floor and made our way down several halls. Have a seat here, Colin said, as he steered me into a small one-window conference room. Just behind Colin I found Mr. Yates, who looked up from the table. Slick. Somewhat handsome, he stood up. Ah, Mr. Rogers, is it? It's good to see you. See, Colin, I whispered at him. This is why I didn't trust you. Please have a seat. Mr. Yates came around the table and nodded to the chair to his right. Fuck, I'm not doing this, I said, turning to walk out the door. I'm sorry to hear about your previous colleague. What was his name? John? Stopping with my fingers on the door handle, I spoke. Why would you say it like that? Like what? Mr. Yates asked, dismissing Colin. Moving around the table, he crossed his arms. Like you don't really care. I'm not stupid. I can see right through you. And what do you see? A controlling, I said slowly, turning around and walking up to him. Rude, probably gets everything he wants man who thinks the world revolves around him, who thinks I'm going to revolve around him. Let me know if I'm leaving anything out. You forgot Rich. How could I have forgotten? I smiled to myself. Turning around to leave, I waved him off. Have fun with all your money. I can make you a very wealthy man, Forrest, Mr. Yates said, his lips practically touching my ear. Please call me Mr. Clemens. Only friends get to use my first name. Okay, Mr. Clemens. How would you like to join our team? Do I have to see you every day? Most days no, and trust me, the feeling's mutual. What would I be doing, anyway? It would be a year-to-year contract. We pay you 2 times a month and we employ you. Doing what? You'll be working on your own as our environmental consultant. I won't be treated like some kind of slave to you. Slave? You won't even have to lift a finger if you do your job right. Sitting down, I looked at my hands. My inheritance fund only paid out for necessities until I turned 26, when I'd have full control over it. But getting a house somewhere would be nice, and if things were to move faster, I'd be able to get Jen sooner than I had hoped. How much is it an hour? Well, Colin said that you only want to work part-time, and lucky you, the position we have is only part-time. Even though you would only work around 3 hours a day Monday through Thursday, the hours are up to you. It's also mandatory to come in one Friday of every month. If you miss it, which you won't because you'll have a year's calendar that plans it all out, you'll also be on call. It doesn't happen often, but if it does, you're expected to show up. If you keep your head clean and your work ethic meets our standards, you'll have no problem fitting in. That still doesn't tell me about the pay. You'll make $250 every hour. That's $750 every day, $6,000 every 2 weeks, $12,000 a month, $144,000 a year. But I recall you telling Colin that money doesn't matter to you, so if that's true, then I'm sure working for $20 an hour would better suit you. Well, I guess it all depends on how bad you need me then, doesn't it? I replied, walking out of the room. I let the back of Mr. Yates's overpowering nature fade from my eyes as he shut the door behind him. alone in the uncomfortable leather-polished wooden chair. I hated this. Holding my hands together tight, I cleared my mind from racing, too scared that my nerves would get the best of me. Walking to the window, I looked out at the passing rain clouds and could hear my mind call out to them. "Derek, look at the clouds. I don't know what I should do." Steadying my breathing, I closed my eyes. The pens closest to my right could be heard as they started rolling across the thick wooden table away from me. Quickly grabbing what I could, Mr. Yates walked in. Letting go of the pens I could grab, I stood up straight and walked up to him. "I've thought about it and I'll do it." "Good. You're making the right choice, Forrest," he said, grabbing on hard to my left shoulder. "Now if you will, my men will go through the paperwork with you and my assistant Sarah will show you around the building." 9:35 a.m. "As far as you know, Opco is an umbrella of many different businesses," Sarah called after me, her heels clicking on the hard polished tile. "We have dealings in the medical field, manufacturing, and utilities, and are the main supplier of power to the Midwest, with a net worth of $20 billion every year. Your floor, Mr. Clemens, will be here," she said, pressing on the 5th floor. "It's just as nice as all the rest. You'll be coming here every day for your set hours. It looks like you'll be working part-time but getting paid full-time with overtime added. They must let you. In your folder, you'll have a list of all the floors and doors you'll have access to and which ones are restricted. Our main office, Mr. Clemens, is a very nice place to work at, as you can see. There will be guards on every floor, so if you have any questions, don't be afraid to ask." She showed me to a small office with a large window. I looked around the small space. Very well furnished, the room looked and smelled as if it had never been used. My question confusing her, I looked around. "This isn't just some made-up position, is it?" Silent for a moment, Sarah stepped in a little. "Even if it were, I'd be thankful. It's expensive to live in a big city like this, and no, it's not. You'll be working alongside one other, Chase, he's our head environmental analyzer. You'll be meeting him shortly." Monday, August 22nd. No cloud cover. The air, humid, heavy, held a mix of gas and salt that drifted on a soft breeze. Pulling at the shoulders of my maroon t-shirt, it stuck to my skin, to my chest, to the inner curve along my spine just up between my shoulder blades. In the summer's heat that reflected off the bright sun-baked concrete sidewalk slabs, I begged for the clouds to move in, to cool the stuffy air and settle on the wind. With a hesitant reach for the glass doors, I let my thoughts freeze me in place for a moment. Overthinking everything, I shook off all my inner questions and made my way up to the 5th floor. 1:15 a.m. Letting my eyes flutter shut after hours of tossing and turning, a dream pulled me deep. Finding myself walking to the library window that overlooked the flower bed, I slowly moved through moss-covered bookshelves. Rows of flowers sprouting from their pages, one for every thought of this place, in the kind of numbers only a rainstorm could grow. I stopped at the glass. Butterflies fluttering past and around me. I looked for Derek and I just below. Behind me, his hands in his pockets, Derek came to walk next to me. Wearing a plaid shirt and a baseball cap, he stood silently to my left. I whispered, "Derek, look at the clouds." Derek's voice was hesitant. It dropped from his lips. He avoided meeting my eyes. "I've never seen so many butterflies," he said, looking around, transfixed. He wiped his eyes. Smiling over at me, he spoke. "What? Did you let them follow you from heaven?"